Hey everybody, I decided to do an update video. I haven't done one for a long time, uh, basically since the beginning of the year, mainly because of the way that things were going, the way that things were happening. Um, I had to make a lot of choices and they needed to be sort of discreet. um, you might notice that my surroundings don't really look like my old apartment. That's because it's not. Um, my what happened was the divorce got finalized. My ex, Brittany Nicole Bailey, um, managed to go through whatever law center that she went through in San Diego and finalize the divorce process. Now she had told them that she was giving me $2,000 a month out of her basic allowance for housing and basic allowance for subsistence, which are two things that you get whenever you get married, in order to subsidize the cost of having basically an extra mouth to feed. Whenever I went down there to San Diego, I had to give up a lot of different things. I'm the second person to have ever managed to get a degree from Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville, a degree from a distance. They told me that it was going to be impossible, but they said, well, actually, one other human being has done it, which was a German exchange student that had to go back to Germany. And they said, so it's possible, it's just really long odds. And the whole time I was down there in San Diego while she was stationed in the area, there's so many different things that a military spouse has to do. And I've been on both sides of the equation now. I've been active duty for 4 years myself with the Navy, and she's still active duty with the Navy. So I've been on both sides of the equation. I've been the active duty personnel, and I've been the spouse. I was never married while I was active duty, though. So I really didn't get a first-hand account of how difficult that transition could really be. Whenever I was active duty in the Navy, I went to boot camp in Chicago, and I went to job training. We called it A school, but it's job training for military police in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. So there was the Recruit Training Command in Great Lakes, Chicago, here in Illinois, and San Antonio, Texas for the Master at Arms military police training. Then I went right to my first duty station in South Korea. That was my very next place to go. And past that was Tinker Air Force Base. That was the second and last duty station that I was at. And throughout those transitions, going from Chicago to San Antonio, Texas was no problem at all. They just marched us all out onto the plane. I didn't have to think about anything. The worst thing that happened was that the person sitting next to me was a fellow sailor who hadn't flown before. So she held my hand and she was very nervous while she was on the plane. But that's the full extent of it. I didn't have to get the plane tickets myself. I didn't have to figure out a way to get down there to training. Nothing like that. And that's far and above different. Before I went into the active duty Navy, I had to go get training to become part of the Family Heritage Life Insurance Company of America. And I had to go get training for 7 days up in Chicago. And whenever I did that, I was probably 17, 18 years old. I think I had just turned 18 years old. And I had to drive up there myself. I had to find ways to feed myself. It did not come with meals. And they did give us a hotel room to split with a roommate that was also in training. But they charged that hotel room back to us. They'll charge you for uniforms and boot camp and stuff like that, but room and board sort of comes with the territory. So there's a lot with the military that sort of gets done for you. And as active duty, like I said, I didn't have to go to boot camp. I had to show up at the military entrance processing station in St. Louis, Missouri. And even then, I really didn't have to show up. Most of the time, the recruiter comes and gets you whenever you're about to go to boot camp, because they know that if they don't come and get you, you're going to have to pay for your vehicle to be parked there for absolutely forever. So he came and got me, and he dropped me off at the military entrance processing station. So I didn't even have to leave my house. I didn't even have to figure out what I'm going to do leaving the house. And I got to the military entrance processing station. They gave us a room for the night. They gave us dinner. They gave us breakfast the next day. They gave us lunch while we were going through the process, making sure that nothing has changed health-wise. And then they put us in a van and drove us to Chicago. Most of the other people got there by plane, and it was a similar process. They were all coming from the military entrance processing stations that was somewhere around where they lived. So everything was sort of done for us. And then from Chicago to San Antonio, Texas, they marched us into a van. We drove to some sort of airport. They marched us onto the plane, and they marched us off of the plane. Everything was done for us. And that's far and above different than doing it yourself. It's a lot different than whenever I was training to be in Family Heritage Life Insurance Company of America. I had to figure out how to feed myself whenever I hadn't even started a job yet. This was still training, and they charged us for the room, and it just kind of went on to a sort of indentured servitude type of thing where we were to pay that back by working for the company. And so the military is really dumbed down for the service member. It's really streamlined, not really dumbed down, but streamlined for the service member so that the fewest possible mistakes can be made from here to there. If somebody is demanding a service member to be somewhere where they need to be, then they really want that process to be as streamlined as possible so that they can get their service member on time and stuff like that, whether it's wartime or what have you, whatever needs to be done. And for me, what needed to be done is a position needed to be filled in South Korea. So that was my first duty station. And like I said, it was the same way. They picked me up from the San Antonio airport. They flew me out to South Korea, and all I had to do was follow directions. There was several times that I had to change planes, and they would say, I'd be getting off one plane, and I would say, hey, here's my ticket, where do I go next? And they would say, well, you're going to have to go and look at the board for arrivals, and that will tell you what gate the next plane is at and how long it's going to take as a layover in between flights. So everything was really, really streamlined, stupid proof, some people might call it. But that's different because as a military spouse, I had to, whenever my ex-wife went to her first duty station in San Diego, I had to figure out a way to get down there. And so me and the cats and all of our stuff and everything, at the time I didn't own a car. My car had just went belly up on me not too long before that, so I had to rent a car. I had to stick all of our stuff in the car. I had to stick my two cats in the car as well, and I had to drive, and whenever I needed to rest, I'd have to go to a rest stop and just sleep in the car with my cats. And that was the way that things went. So the military, whenever you get married, they will either give you basic allowance for housing and basic allowance for subsistence for your spouse to subsist on for the housing and stuff like that, to subsidize these costs, or they will at least increase them if you're already getting those benefits. So she was getting probably close to $5,000 extra a month just for being married to me the entire time that we were married. And she would give me $2,000 of that, and then she would pocket the rest. And she would just save up however much extra money. this is a relatively common thing. By and large, your average service member is going to be a better spouse than your average other dating person that you want to date out there. And that's largely because, they've all been through criminal background checks. But every now and again, you get somebody who wants to do something a little sketchy for one plan or another. There's plenty of sort of abandoned spouses stories, and like I said, you're gonna get that a lot less common with service members, but it's still a common enough problem for the military to have services just to try to fix this problem. But there are plenty of people that'll get married to somebody. They'll say, "Oh, I'm gonna save up money for you to come down" or something like that. Whenever they get paid to transport their spouse from here to there, and they'll say, "Well, I had to use that for this. I had to use that for that," and then a couple of years later, their spouse will get the divorce papers in the mail, and they wouldn't have benefited at all from all of the extra money being given to the service member. So you can kind of tell. Just imagine if I was married and my active duty career never changed. I just had an extra mouth to feed. Imagine being a military spouse and having to go to South Korea. With me, I stepped off of the plane. There were some people already there that said, "Hey, are you XYZ?" And I said yes, and they said, "Come with us." They put me in a van and they drove me to the base, showed me my room, showed me everything that needed to happen, everything that needed to go, and I started work pretty soon afterwards. I said, like, be at this place on Monday. Here's how to get from your room to this place. And your roommate knows the way anyways, so just go with them. And so everything was really, really streamlined. But as a military spouse, it would be different. I would have to, step off the plane. I'd be with the spouse. The spouse would be taken away from their lives, their family, any sort of jobs. And then suddenly they're in South Korea, where they don't speak the local language. They have no coworkers. They have no one to tell them what to do. They usually don't have any roommates either, so there's nobody that can say, "Oh, just come with me, I'm going to go grocery shopping, and so you can just follow me and I'll take you down to the grocery store and then take you back to make sure that you know the way," and these sorts of things. They don't know the local currency, they don't know the exchange rate, they don't know much of anything, and suddenly they're just tore away from their entire lives. So if they've been working at a store until they got promoted to general manager, well, now they're back down to square zero, and they have to just find employment if they want to go that route, or find an appropriate school to start higher academia or whatever they want to do. So it is quite a bit different. But basically, she had been getting probably around $5,000 extra dollars a month. I could probably look up the exact number because I had to print off her leave and earnings statements in order to get my old apartment in Alton, Illinois, and so I had to do that. So I could probably give you the exact number, but she told me that somebody had said, you can pay him as little as $2,000 a month, and so she did. But I never double checked that information. I really should have said, "Okay, who said that? Let me get it in writing and paperwork." And I think the same thing happened with the her law office. And so whenever she said, "I'm paying him $2,000 a month," and I'm getting this much extra money, they should have been able to tell the difference and look at her leave and earnings statement and say, "Actually, you're getting this amount of money and you're pocketing all of the extra money, and you're only giving him this much, and that's what he has to live on while he's at school." And they should have been able to tell the difference. But as a civilian organization, they have no obligation to go that extra step. They can see the disparity with their eyes, but they have no obligation to do that extra stuff. So they probably didn't. So whenever I got the divorce papers in the mail that says that it was finalized, she had told them that she only had to give me $1,000 a month out of the like 5,000 extra dollars that she was getting. And so she told them that. They believed her, and they didn't ask for any extra paperwork either. And she said that she was giving me an extra $1,000 every month. $2,000 is more than enough to live here in Illinois, most places. It's not going to be a fancy life, but it's going to be a life. So whenever I got the divorce paperwork, it stated from her law office that she was giving me extra money. Therefore, she doesn't have to pay any alimony. This will be the last possible thing that you hear from her, etc., etc. And so getting that paperwork, it was like that day I didn't have any more money. And then she went and took all of the money out of my account since she still had her name on it. And I had to like call her repeatedly until she picked up and report her under every single avenue that I had to report her through the USS Carl Vinson that she was stationed on at the time. I had to report her through the bank itself, and I had to report her through the family advocacy program, just report her in every single way. And then finally, whenever she picked up the phone, I said, please put the money back in the account. And she had closed out that account because it was our joint account, even though she hadn't used it for years. And she finally put the money back in the account, and it was just enough money for me to sort of adjust from here. So one of the big things, one of the reasons why I haven't done an update video in a while is because I knew that I was going to have to make a major change, and it was going to be in the middle of a semester, while taking pre-med classes. So, really high level stuff, really intensive, work intensive stuff that needs a lot of studying and stuff like that. And that I was going to have to make a major change in the semester somewhere in the middle here. I knew sometime in March she was going to go to her next duty station and somewhere in Italy. And so knowing that, I sort of had to look at my different options and figure out what I'm going to do. I didn't expect it to be so sudden. I didn't expect to get a piece of paper that says she doesn't owe you any money whatsoever. We're lawyers XYZ, and what we say goes. And we've already filed this through San Diego. They didn't tell me any of that whenever I got on the phone with them several different times. But that was the way that things went. Now, according to the legal paperwork, her name is officially Brittany Nicole Bailey. So you don't have to remember anything else if you ever come across her. But that's the way that things went. So suddenly I couldn't afford my rent or any of my bills or anything else. I just had the money that she finally put back into my accounts, and that was it. That's all that I had to rely on. Thankfully, my grandparents came in clutch. They said, you can stay at your uncle's old place that's near the farm that they're in. Not only am I loath to say where it is, I try not to. She has so many different family members and stuff like that who still believe 100% of everything that she says without any evidence whatsoever, and they refuse to look at any evidence to the contrary of what she's saying. And I get wanting to be supportive of a family member or something like that, but there's a certain piece of the puzzle where you're intentionally not looking at evidence to the contrary, and that's exactly the situation that they're in. But my grandparents had told me that, like I said, I try not to reveal my location because these are very irrational people that refuse to listen to any evidence to the contrary, refuse to produce any evidence of their own that she's telling the truth. because she's not, and she refuses to get any evidence that she's telling the truth because she's not. And I have my 600 pages of medical files. And if you look on some of my old videos, my old update videos, one of the things that happened was one of her friends was posting in the comments saying that I was actually the abusive one. I said, okay, so tell me why all of my medical records are wrong. Tell me why all of my medical professionals who completely disagree with you, tell me why they are wrong, and why I have 600 pages of medical records from 3 different organizations and she has nothing whatsoever. Why does she refuse to go to the doctor? Because the doctor would probably be able to tell that she's lying, these sorts of things. And lying isn't against the law. It's just that these sorts of things, her friends and family, they truly believe that that I was the one that was doing things wrong the entire time in the relationship. Even, well, especially because they refuse to look at any evidence to the contrary. And she refuses to get any evidence because she's lying. And I can prove it. I have my medical records. I have all these different things. I'm not a mastermind who was able to brainwash every single doctor that I came across, and doctor and counselor and lawyer and anybody else. So it's impossible for me to do so, and so I didn't, and I have all the evidence that I need to prove it. So my grandparents, they said I could stay in my uncle's old property. They had his old mobile home there. It is in very bad shape. And so they went and got me a camper. Now, I'm not sure whose camper it is. They didn't also hand me the title, so it might be somebody else's camper. I'm not sure. So I don't want to do any modifications to it. At the moment, they've managed to get a single single piece of the electricity to work. So they have a single extension cord. If I plug in one too many things to this extension cord, the circuit breaks, and I have to go down and flip it on and off again. So that's what I've got. I'm in a camper right now. It's a little over or under 100 square feet. I definitely have less than 100 square feet of living space on the inside. Me and the cats are here, and that's my living situation at the moment. The mobile home that my uncle used to live in is a complete disaster zone. It looks like the floor needs repaired in several areas. There's stuff absolutely everywhere. It looks like a tornado went through it. The ceiling leaks, the wall leaks, all these different things. And the pipes froze over during the winter, so they shut everything off. So I don't have running water here. I just have the one extension cord from the power pole. We tried to figure out everything that went wrong from the power pole all the way to here, and that we could only get one plug-in on the entire property to work. So I'm just happy to have that. And that's about it. That's all I have. So I went to Walmart. I bought myself one electric burner, and that's all I get to cook with. I got a heater, which really doesn't do this place much justice. The walls of this camper are relatively thin, and at night it gets freezing this time of year here in Illinois. And like I said, I try not to reveal my location because I'm dealing with these people, but also I don't even know the address here. I just know where it is. So that's my current living situation. It sounds really horrible, but just imagine if it was any other way. If I didn't have a supportive family to help me out in my time of need. If it was any other way, I'd be living in my car, with the cats, which is something I had to do on the way back from California. Whenever I came back here to Illinois, I just had to sleep in the car, and I had the food and water bowls underneath one of the passenger seats in the back, and the litter box underneath the other passenger seat in the back. Um, and I'd be in there, all because of what happened to me. And this is, it's very clear. Stuff like this, especially whenever you're getting no communication whatsoever from the wife at the time, but now the ex-wife, these sorts of things can be absolutely devastating to somebody. So absolutely, staying in a camper is great. I managed to find after moving everything, I managed to find the power cords for my Nintendo Switch. So I've been diddling around on that and playing it whenever I need a break from trying to find things in the shed. Most of the stuff I just threw in the shed. There's a shed on the property. So I threw most of my possessions in the shed. Like I said, I don't have any running water, so I went ahead and filled up a 5-gallon bucket of rainwater, that's sort of camp gear, and the camper that they bought just for me to stay in. Like I said, I don't know whose it is, so I don't want to make any modifications to it. The camper itself, it came with a 15-gallon bucket for gray water, so I can wash hands and dishes with those two things. It's not potable water. It's not designed for potable water. I had been saving up every gallon of milk. I had been washing out each thing just in preparation for whatever happens. And so thankfully I have, probably 10 gallons of potable water from milk cartons that I had washed out, gallon jugs of milk. And I had been lowering my spending as much as humanly possible these past couple of months, just in preparation for whatever happened. I didn't know that everything was going to be so sudden, but there it is. And there's still a couple of things that could have been done. Given the way that things are, given the way that things would be, there were still plenty of different options. But if I didn't have such a supportive family, I wouldn't have gotten this. But this whole situation for me is still kind of exciting because the area that I'm at is beyond city limits, and so I'm not confined by building codes. I can build whatever I want out here. So once I get some pallet wood together, I can probably build something that's semi-decent. I can repair the mobile home for the most part and get it to a living status. I can fix a lot of the things in the shed and get it back to living status. But that's the way that things are. And to me, it's still very exciting to be out here, to live out here and everything. This property isn't mine. This camper isn't mine, as far as I know, since I don't have the deed. And none of this is mine. This is just some place to temporarily stay at while I figure out my next move. At the moment, I decided not to do anything whenever it comes to my classes or anything like that. I'm just going to continue trying to go to school, do as best as I can. This should be the last semester of pre-med classes that I have to deal with, and just go from there. So that's the plan. That's what I have to do. That's kind of the update on top of everything else. But that's what happened to me. And like I said, I had to keep a lot of my own plans relatively discreet. I had to abandon my apartment almost basically in the middle of the night, I had to get all of my stuff out of the apartment, and I was using shopping bags and stuff like that just to pretend that I wasn't moving out, because I had to skip out on a lease. So I couldn't make an update video and say like, hey, I'm skipping out on my lease, That's not against the law to do so. but it's also something that they can try to get in the way of. They can try to stop you from doing so. Most leases aren't enforceable by law. If you don't pay your rent, they can force you out, but skipping out of a lease is not against the law. And they can still do a lot of things to with that entire process. They can go in and say they still owe me rent for the rest of the year, and start a process where they sue me for the rest of the rent for the year. I signed my new lease in December. I didn't know what else to do. I could have rented on a month-to-month basis. They gave me the option to do so, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how long I had. I was dealing with somebody who was breaking a ton of laws and wasn't speaking to me whatsoever. And so that's, like I said, that's the update. So what am I doing now? What's going on now? Everything like that. What's going to happen from here on out? Well, I have to set up a camp shower that I bought from Walmart. Just about everything I bought from Walmart. Thankfully, like I said, she did put the money back in my account. So, and I had saved up a little bit of money. So I have a camp shower. I'd like to set that up in in my uncle's old mobile home. It's a bit too chilly to start and showering outside at the moment. I'm probably gonna have to get a U-Haul and go and get as many wood pallets as possible so I can put something together myself. I'd like to clean out the mobile home and the property first. There's a lot that needs to be done with the shed as well. I'll take most of the stuff that was in the shed, and it's kind of just random knickknacks and stuff like that. Some machinery that still works, some machinery that has probably never worked in the shed. So I'd like to clean out the shed. I'd like to clean out the mobile home. And I'm probably not going to be able to restore the mobile home to living status or anything that could be misconstrued as living status, but I could get it to a point where it could be extra space for me. I could probably set up a home gym in there. I still have rehabilitation exercises that I have to do with my right shoulder. It hurts me every now and again. My lower back hurts me every now and again. But most of the time, the low back tracks, which you could also find at Walmart, the low back tracks, just doing that every day and using that for a good 16, 20 minutes or however long it takes, that will reduce and eliminate my back pain within a couple of days. And if I do my shoulder rehabilitation exercises that they had me do at the Jefferson Barracks VA medical facility whenever I first started complaining about my shoulder impingement, that it bothered me whenever I was in boot camp. It bothered me several times during my active duty military career. So it's kind of been an injury that comes and goes and kind of haunts me from time to time. But if I do my rehabilitation exercise they had me do every day, then in about 2 weeks it'll stop bothering me altogether. So I could probably clean up the mobile home enough to put a home gym in there and start rehabilitating my shoulder again. It hasn't really bothered me too much during this process. My low back has bothered me quite a bit when I was moving all this stuff. And I'd like to put together a camp shower in the bathroom of the mobile home as well. And at least have it to where I could do those two things. Go there, work out, maybe in the living room or something, and take camp showers. Like I said, I still don't have any running water here on the property. We're going to look at fixing that a little bit later. It's not something that I can do by myself. I don't know how anything on this property works yet. I just have the one extension cord with power running through it. I'd like to eventually get some solar panels going. I ordered some stuff on how to put together these types of things from I think the company is just called For Patriots, and I did that way back in 2011. Whenever I was curious about the topic, and so now I think it's Power for Patriots, Power the number four, and Patriots. And I warn you, they're kind of a prepper community, and so I've been getting some sort of alarmist emails from them ever since. But otherwise, it's good information. Yeah, whenever you're going for a sort of sustainable thing, like my bachelor's is in sustainability. Whenever you're going towards a sustainable thing and you're getting some information from sustainable people, you'll either get it from people that might be called hippies. Some people still refer to themselves as hippies, but other people are just name calling, you know. Or you can get it from sort of scientific people, or you can get it from preppers that think that the end of the world is nigh. And Power for Patriots is kind of on the prepper side. So I'll warn you before you go that direction, but their information is solid. They're very step by step. So I want to kind of go towards that. What am I doing about this situation? Well, with this power coming in to the camper, this just means I'm an additional burden on my family at the moment, through no real fault of my own. I spoke to my father about this. I spoke to a number of other different people about this, and basically nobody has any easy answers. You know, there's no protocol for this type of situation whenever you get horribly mistreated, and you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, everything that you've been told to do. But I was already firing on all cylinders, especially whenever I was an Army ROTC, and being a full-time college student and doing all this other kind of stuff all at the same time. And so this is just par for the course for me. If you get mistreated, you're going to have a little bit harder. But so what am I doing about this situation with the power coming into the camper? I'm still kind of a burden on my family, so one of the things I really want to do as soon as I possibly can is to get some solar panels going and stuff like that, and maybe be a little bit more self-sufficient. They were very worried about the amount of power that I would be consuming here, because they said if I was independent around the area and I wasn't hooked up to their sort of power system for the farm, then that I would have to pay out the nose, because out here in the country, the power bill is just that much more expensive. They can fleece whoever they want out here because there's no other options. I switched over from TracFone to AT&T. I got a Wi-Fi hotspot, and I managed to do my homework on it a couple of days ago. So I got an AT&T Wi-Fi hotspot, and I've got an unlimited data plan for the phone itself. So, and I have one of those little thingamajigs that I can't use my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot. That's not allowed under the AT&T's unlimited data plan, but I do get signal out here. I can watch videos out here. I've got a little thingamajig that I can plug into my phone, and I can plug it into a TV, and so I can sort of watch videos on the big screen, even if they take a little while to load here out in the country. And so I got stuff like that. I'm not going to be doing any online gaming. Not that it's something that I ever really did, but that's certainly not going to be an option with an AT&T Wi-Fi hotspot. Once things get a little bit more set up and I get something that looks a little bit more like a permanent living situation, then I could get the local internet around here, cable, sort of regular Wi-Fi, stuff like that, and the internet speeds can be a little bit faster. But like I said, I never really did that much mobile gaming before, so I'm not really going to start doing that now. Um, and so that's sort of the steps forward. So what about this whole thing? What about the divorce and stuff like that? I still got some money. I have to set up the camp shower. I got to clean up around this place. I've got homework to do, stuff like that. So I've got a bunch of stuff rolling around in my head, and whenever I get time, I go out there and do whatever I need to do. Um, like I said, there is no running water here, so at the moment, thankfully, I had done enough with sustainability to know about composting toilets, and so I set up one of those. Traditional two bucket system. If you really want to look into that, then just Google it. I'm not gonna walk you through every little step of the process unless that's something that people really start requesting in the comments or something like that. But that's generally what's going on. Whenever the divorce was finalized, she took half of her debt, and thankfully, she doesn't even know about all the debt that she has. She can't remember it all. So it's whatever debt that she could remember and write down. So she probably put me a good $8,000 extra dollars in debt whenever we got divorced. And that's officially part of the whole divorce process. That sort of no contest divorce is very common in California where we got married. And so that's exactly what they went through. Um, I went ahead and sued her. Um, there's a little application that helps you do all sorts of stuff like that. And they can generate forms, and it's fairly easy to take somebody to small claims court for something like this. Um, like I said, she probably put me a good $8,000 in debt, so I went ahead and I generated a form for $10,000, which is the maximum amount of money that you can sue somebody for and take them to small claims court. So I generated the form. It gave her until the end of February. She did not agree to any terms whatsoever. She refused to talk to me about it at all. But I called her every day to do my due diligence and make sure that everybody knew that I was trying to contact her. I was trying to negotiate with her. I was being polite. I wasn't calling her any names or anything like that. So I did all of that. She didn't agree to any terms. So I'm fully within my power to take her to small claims court to deal with this. The $10,000, that's nowhere near the amount of money that she's wasted from my family, from her family. The $75,000 of debt that she's gotten herself into. So my hope is that whenever I take her to small claims court, I'll be able to present all 600 pages of all my medical evidence, and they'll escalate this. And if they escalate it, then hopefully I can really start going towards the process of, they call it TCAP, I believe, temporary compensation for abused dependents, which will pay me $3,000 for a period of 3 years, $3,000 a month for a period of about 3 years, if everything goes well. And so I can start marching towards that. But that's the way I'm dealing with this whole situation. I tried to get into a master's program in sustainability with Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville, but they didn't have all my records. So I tried to do that at the beginning of the semester, and it was just too little too late. So I didn't manage to get into that. If I can get into a master's program, I can start borrowing student loans, and that can make this whole situation a lot easier to deal with. And if I can borrow student loans, then I can get a little bit extra after they pay for all the classes and everything. In the meantime, there's always the option of going on a water fast as long as humanly possible, probably every day that I'm not actively in school. So, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this semester, and just, going on a water fast for 3 days out of the week, every single week that I can, to try to lose 50 pounds, I've been told that I can join the Army Reserves at any point in time. I can join the National Guard at any point in time, and that would pay for the classes, and they'll have like the world's tiniest stipend on top of that. Um, and I could use that money to live and exist and pay for gas to and from um, the school. I can get a little bit of money that way. I can help out on the farm and whatever pocket change that they can lend me. If they know anybody that needs help, I can help out on the farm as well. Thankfully, I am just taking the 2 classes this semester. It's a high level chemistry class, and hopefully my last chemistry class I'll have to take for my pre-med requirements for the Uniformed Services University of Healthcare Sciences, and I can sort of go from there. But anything else, it's going to have to be through the school or something like that. It'll have to be something very creative. But thankfully, at the moment, I'm hooked up to my grandparents' power system. They're the ones that are paying the bills. They can provide me with food if I need it. I can go over there and I can fill up water. I can use their facilities. I can take a shower over there if I want. But I'm trying to stay as much out of their hair as possible. I'm trying to concentrate on studies right now. I'm not doing super hot in the chemistry class. And the other class that I'm in, which is Science of Happiness right now, it's a sociology course. I just needed something to get me over 6 credits for the semester so I can push my student loans off for another semester, because obviously I'm not making any money whatsoever still. I can go from there. So I've got lots of little options, and I'm picking on one thing at a time, and I'm trying my best. But that's the update. That's what's currently going on. I'm no longer in the the apartment in Alton, Illinois. I'm somewhere in the vicinity of Medora, Illinois. I'm staying in a camper on my grandparents' property with their permission. I'm hooked up to their sort of power grid with their permission. I've got no running water, but I do have lots of potable water, lots of wastewater, composting toilet system, 2 bucket system that I set up myself. And thankfully, I know enough about sustainability and everything. To me, this is exciting. To me, this is like a permanent camping trip in a place that doesn't have any building code, so I can build whatever I want. I can get really creative out here. I can do whatever I want, but I have to do that while passing my classes. So right after this video, I'm probably going to start on my homework. I need to find my chargers since I threw everything in the garage. So I need to find the charger for my netbook, my Chromebook, so I can do my homework on it, and then I'll probably have to head to my grandparents' house as soon as it gets dark so I can print out a bunch of assignments that are due on Monday. So, be a student, do what needs to be done, and then as soon as I get the student thing under control, then I can start really expanding outward. But at the moment, that's what's going on. Every day, I can go down to the snack pantry at Lewis and Clark Community College, and I can get a little bit of extra food to help out with things without having to rely on my family. I can always go down there and eat if I want. They're not going to throw a fit about that at all. They probably throw out a lot of food just like a traditional American family. They're not making a buffet every day and throwing most of it out, but they're farmers. They're going to have some extra food lying around, and they've offered various times. And I said, well, let me dig through my current supply of food, and we'll go from there. And so I had some soup and some chili that I made, and I managed to get it over here. And little dorm refrigerator from Walmart. Nothing is working inside the camper. I have the one thing that's providing power for the camper, but for some reason it's not powering the built-in stove, and it's not powering the built-in refrigerator. So right now the refrigerator that came with the camper, that's built into the camper, it's not working. So I'm just using it for storage, and so I had to buy a dorm refrigerator for the camper, and I had to put it on top of everything else. So that's the way things. And it's not hooked up to the septic system either. So I had to do the composting toilet thing and stuff like that. So everything is sort of existing on top of all the stuff that's currently built in. But for me, like I said, some people would consider this homelessness, um, uh, but really it's camping. It's a permanent camping thing, and I'm used to camping. I did it for fun whenever I was a kid. That was our like family vacations. We never even had an RV. We would just get out there in a tent and do our best. Whatever the weather came, we just did our best. So camping, that's a step up for me. And I was an Army ROTC at SIUE, so I got used to a lot of the camping stuff, and so I'm not going to be. This isn't going to hurt my feelings at all. So far, so good. If I had any hair to tear out, I probably should be tearing it out, but I'm not too overly worried. I'm still pretty happy about this. Of course, I do have my anti-anxiety medications, my antidepressants, and my ADHD medication that I'm taking, so that's probably helping out quite a bit. The year of therapy that I did in 2018, that's probably helping out quite a bit. But I just look at the next thing. What's the next thing that needs to be done? Well, I need to find my charger cords for my Chromebook so I can do my homework. And I need to do that before the sun goes down, or else I'm going to be out with my cell phone light trying to find it. So that's the next thing that needs to be done. What's next after that? Well, I got myself a Dutch oven kettle. What do they call it? A cast iron skillet, a Dutch oven cast iron skillet, because I figured it could maybe replace the need for an oven. And said, well, I need to do a bunch of things to it to get it to usable quality. What's next after that? I'm going to try to figure out whether or not I can get the propane stove inside the camper to work, because most of the seasoning that needs to be done to the cast iron skillet needs to be done with some sort of working stove. If not, I'm going to have to go outside and I'm going to have to build an old-fashioned stove from the ground up. And thankfully, Townsend and Sons on YouTube, they do stuff like this. And thankfully, I have AT&T, so I get a signal out here. And thankfully, I have an unlimited data plan with AT&T, so I can look stuff up if I don't know what to do. But I just look at the next thing, and what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, and I focus on one thing at a time, and I don't get myself into a panic, because I just think of one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. Whatever I can do next, that's what I focus on. So far so good. I'm super excited to be out here. I'm super excited to have this place on my own. I'm not so far from civilization that I can't at least have a house within sight lines. I'm not so far out in civilization that I can just take all my clothes off and run around. It's too cold to do that anyways. But I'm not super duper far away from civilization. But I'm in a place with no building codes, so the sky's the limit. So for me, it's exciting, but that's what happened. That's what's going on with me now. That's what the plans are for the future, and I'll just go from there. You might consider it a really bad situation, and it could have been a very bad situation if I didn't have a supportive family, but thankfully I do have a supportive family. So I'll just keep being a pre-med student. Hopefully this will be the last semester I'm focusing on pre-med, and then maybe I can focus on something else, maybe work towards a master's degree. Maybe I can get into the Army Reserves or National Guard once I, cut down the weight and get back in fighting shape again. But one thing at a time. Whatever's next, I'll do that. Whatever's next, I'll do that. And to-do lists, they never actually run out, right? And especially if they live in here, you never run out of stuff that needs to be done. You never run out of the next possible step. But that's what I'll focus on. And so that's the update. Like I said, you could say that it's a really scary story, and it could have been a very scary story. You can say that it's a sad story, and it could have been a sad story. But to me, I'm excited. I'm excited. My face probably doesn't show it, but I'm excited. This is sort of the next stage of my life here, and I'll figure out what can be done. What can I do out here? What can I do with academia? Can I keep going? Is there a way to get stuff done? These are the sorts of the questions that I can answer in the future. But for now, one thing at a time. And for now, this doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I'm excited to be out here. I'm excited to finally put a lot of my sustainability teaching into effect. Finally apply some of the science that went into my head and went into the piece of paper that I got from the colleges that I went to. So that's it. That's the update. I'm excited. You might think it's a sad story. I don't think it's a sad story. I think it's a pretty good story to have a supportive family who was able to, help me out in my time of need. And so far so good. That's it. That's the update. Bye.